everyone. I'm here today with my friend Luke Charles. Luke is just such an amazing guy. He has brought so much encouragement and wisdom into my life, and he's an actor, a musician, just an amazing, encouraging life coach. And we could literally talk for hours about so many different topics, but we
Yeah.
both kind of had this topic on our hearts, and that is purpose. So that's going to be what we're chatting about today. Thank you so much for being with us, Luke.
Woo! Hey, thanks for having me. And hi to everybody out there. Thanks for joining us. Kirsten, if you
Yeah.
don't know, has been launching this podcast. And I got to say, Kirsten, you have done something so cool here. I mean,
Thank you.
even the title, Imperfect. I hope you guys absolutely enjoy this because these are the things that we've been really wanting to hear and talk about. And so we're going to deep dive in all that. So thanks so much for having me,
Amen.
Kirsten.
Thank you. And thanks for saying that. So, okay, I feel like when we were last talking, we were talking about identity and where we find our value. And I think if 2020 showed us anything, it's that the things that we thought we knew and the things that maybe we put our security in that is not a stable foundation, all of those things were shaken. And so, when your identity is in doubt, that leads to depression. And we've been talking about that a lot as well. And actually, there was a study that during COVID, depression symptoms were 3 times higher than
Yeah.
prior to the COVID lockdown. So, obviously, COVID has had an extremely tremendous impact on people's depression levels. I don't think we need a study to prove that or to come to that conclusion. But you have a really great perspective on where we can find identity and security, especially during trying times. So I would love if you could just share where you find your identity and security in.
Well, I mean, that 100%. I tell my clients the same thing is that you got to be willing to have a good conversation with your inner child. You got to be willing to have a good conversation with the part of you that's the most authentic. Things like COVID, not being able to leave, losing jobs. I know many of us lost jobs this past year. We lost relatives. We lost the things that we put our worth in. And so that's what I'm talking about. When I say inner child, those are just fancy words that I've learned about that is really just saying, like, where do I put my worth? Strip me down, shave my head, take away my work, take away everything I own. You can have all the accolades, fame, and money in the world, but take all that away, and who are you? You can have the nicest car, you can have the nicest everything. You can even accomplish your career goals and have all of those in your hand, and you can still be unhappy.
Yeah.
So the question is, where are you placing your worth? And I encourage folks to get back to like having that dialogue with their inner child.
Yeah.
And understanding, okay, who do I dream to grow up to be? And so that may sound like an emphatic question, but for many of us, whether you have masculine tendencies or feminine tendencies, it really all roads lead to Rome. Who you dream of being, and not who do I need to be. This is huge, and I've struggled with this in my lifetime. We'd need a whole other podcast just for this. I've struggled with the question, well, who do I need to be for other people?
Yeah. People pleasing.
People pleasing, and then so the authenticity gets distorted. And we lose that inner child, and we lose the son or daughter that we are. We lose the king or queen that you're called to be and created for. Anyway, I'll get to talking.
Yeah. Oh, I already have so many things. What was that?
So the question is, where's your worth? And go talk to your inner child about that. Or if you don't want to use the dialogue inner child, your inner worth, your inner person, and who you dream of being. Not for other people, but if it was just you and you alone in a room, who would you want to see staring you back in that mirror?
I think what you're saying too is like, what are the things like job title aside? Because I think as we tell kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we're implying what you want to be as in your job title. And so it's not our fault that we associate our identity so heavily with our career or our occupation or how much money's in the bank, because that's literally how our brains have been wired since we were young. But that's why if you listen to any successful person, a lot of them have worked so hard their whole lives, and then they finally get to that achievement that they had in their mind that they needed to reach in their career, but they've neglected their soul and who they really are aside from their job along the way. And when they finally hit that point, then there's so much actually depression that follows because they're still the same person and they thought it would be so different once they hit that thing. But I think that's why you see so many celebrities
Yeah.
so lost.
100%, 100%. And then so, whatever you believe, whatever your higher power is, whether you're a Jesus guy, whether you're something else, one of the things that Kirsten and I have talked about has been, the scripture that says, what is it to gain the whole world but lose your soul?
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine? I've experienced, and I know Kirsten, you could lean into this too. I've experienced successes. I've experienced great loss. I've experienced the moments that feel so fleeting. Well, because they are.
Yeah.
Exactly that. The mountaintop, if you climbed to Mount Everest right now, you couldn't stay there. You wouldn't be able to last. Most people don't even make it there, which is also another analogy in and of itself. But if you climb something and build something, that's beautiful. But if your worth is in getting to Mount Everest, if you try to stand on the top of Mount Everest your whole life, you will not live very long, I can promise you. So it's the same with the mountains that we climb with our careers and our vocation and our bodies and our physical life and our all those kinds of things. Kirsten, you know this, but when I was younger, I was bulimic. And I was very overweight. That's something that I placed, personally, that's just one example of many. I placed my worth in what do I have to be physically to gain approval. And it just doesn't work. I didn't get what I was looking for. In fact, I got the opposite. So whether it's that, whether it's career, you place worth in the wrong things, and the wrong things will rob you of your soul.
Yeah. And how did you get to a place of kind of rectifying that body image and putting your emphasis on that? Like, what was your journey? I mean, this might be a really long conversation, but how did you finally flip that?
Yeah. It's a choice in your mind. So let's just break past most of the conversation and get to that. It's a choice in your mind. And it becomes really easy when you do one thing. So for me, I was in middle school. I was bullied. I was picked on. I was pinched. I even had a couple swirlies. I mean, that really did happen.
Like where they stick your head in the toilet?
Oh, yeah.
Thought that only happened in cartoons.
No. If that's the case, then I was totally on Looney Tunes. It was great.
Oh, my gosh.
No. It's funny, and those folks now today reach out to me for friendship.
Wow. Because who's the person that sticks someone else's head in a toilet? Someone that's really hurt and broken themselves.
Exactly. 100%. So love and compassion and empathy are also so important when you do gain access to a greater understanding of yourself, because you don't have to sacrifice your worth to empathize. I also don't have to let you cross a boundary to do that. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, so that's what I was going through. I ended up getting into, I didn't really know what I was doing in terms of losing weight at the time. I was going into high school, coming out of middle school, and I just burned a bunch of calories. I lost just about 60 pounds over summer break, about less than 3 months. I was so hungry that the last month is when I started being bulimic because the number started to slow. So what started out as being a 14-year-old kid who was enjoying seeing that decrease and set out to be better, I mean, I was doing it out of a place of self-hate, and that's my point. I gained the weight back.
Yeah.
And then I had this thought. I remember standing in the mirror in my bedroom, or in a bathroom, and I had gained like just about all of it back. And I had this thought of like, what would it look like if I did this from a place of appreciation? Appreciating and loving the person that you are before you start to make changes to it. That is what makes it self-sustainable. I've been physically fit for over 10 years now, and I just had chips and salsa and a glass of wine earlier. So, I mean,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
had cake last night. There's a way to do it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So my point is not, about chips and salsa. My point is, if you do it from a place of self-worth and love, not to prove anything. I set out to
Mm,
prove something, and I
mm,
proved that I couldn't withstand the weight of it. Because as
mm.
soon as I started eating again, I could not stop eating. I was so hungry.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, that's how I did
Wow.
it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I think it is so important, no matter what it is that you're trying to heal, like until you do that inner work, like these external things are not going to be sustained, like you said. And I love that image that you were talking about of your inner child and like kind of healing your inner child. It's interesting that you mentioned that because when I was home for the holidays, I ran into the most divine encounter ever. Like, I was at home doing some work. My mom stopped home really quick and was like, "Oh, I'm running to the grocery store." And I was like, "Oh, I want to come with you." It was like such a random, like, thought, but I went with her and I ended up seeing my teacher from third and fourth grade in the grocery store. And she was like, my brother had her too. She was like such a special person to my family, such a special teacher. Like, if I look back on my teachers I've had over the years, she probably was like top three most influential teacher I had. So this is who we're seeing. I haven't seen her in 15 years. And my mom recognized her right away. She recognized my mom. We all had our masks on, and my mom's an identical twin. So my mom was like, "It's Sandy," because Mrs. Vospikian was like, "Is that Susan or Sandy?" And then my mom's like, "It's Sandy. This is Kirsten." And so Mrs. Vospikian came running and grabbed me, gave me a hug, started crying. I'm crying. And so we get into this conversation. And my point of bringing all this up is she said, "I always used to feel so bad because I would see you sitting in class and I could see you getting so upset and frustrated with yourself. You were erasing your paper over and over again to the point where you'd rip the paper and have to come ask for more paper. And it was never good enough for you. And you just wanted to be perfect." And she said the word perfect like 3 times. And the reason why I'm making this podcast is because, and naming it that, is because I've struggled with perfectionism my whole life, and it's something that I feel like I've really been analyzing more recently and healing and trying to heal. And having my third grade teacher literally say, "I watched you struggle with perfectionism, and I could see you just were like so angry at yourself." So I started crying. And then later I was journaling about it. And I just had this moment where I saw myself in that classroom as a third grader. And I like walked up to my 10-year-old self and just told her, like, "You're enough and you're going to be fine." But then I realized, okay, that's what 26-year-old Kirsten is telling 10-year-old Kirsten. What is in another 15 years, 40-year-old Kirsten wanting to tell 26-year-old Kirsten? And I think it might sound like a lofty thing to people, but what it did for me, it was like really zoom me out in like a tangible way and see that the things that we're struggling with right now aren't always like the big thing, you know? And I think that was kind of a long way to saying I really, really connect with that
So when you
younger child thing.
so when you think, I'm the podcast host now, I guess. But when you think about that inner dialogue with your inner child, or that dialogue with your inner child, how do you view her?
How do I view her?
Yeah.
I was like, I just saw this like precious little 10-year-old who just wanted to please everyone. I wanted to please my teacher. I wanted to please my parents. I wanted to please my friends. And I was so scared of failing. I was so scared of not being good enough. And the tangible expression of that was schoolwork. Like, was I going to get A's or not? And then like, why do I need to get A's? So I can get into accelerated classes. And like, why do I need to get into accelerated classes? So I can get into a college. I'm really revealing my inner nerd right now too, but like that was what 10-year-old Kirsten was worried about. And by
Yeah.
the way, like I accomplished all of those things, not to toot my
Hey.
own horn. I got into my dream college and, you know, but like I was so stressed about it. It's like, how could I wish I could have shaken 10-year-old Kirsten and told her to just like have more fun and to enjoy the process more because I was enough and I am enough. And so how can I incorporate that now so that in another 15 years, 40-year-old Kirsten isn't like, I wish I had more fun and I wish I enjoyed myself and I wish I wasn't so hard on myself.
Yeah. Here's something too. When I had a very innocent, pure moment when I was young. I was 9 years old. It was the first moment I ever felt kind of what we're talking about. It was before any of the trauma in my own life. I was 9 years old. I was falling in love with characters like Superman. I ended up, all these moments in the mirror. I was standing in the mirror and I was 9 years old, kind of trying to imagine, how will I look when I'm older, when I'm, when I'm a grown man. Because I had just watched, I ran into a 9-year-old kid watching a documentary on Theodore Roosevelt. And then I started watching another one on Dr. King. And I started becoming obsessively encouraged by all these different men of character and integrity. So character latched itself onto me at a young age, and my grandpa, Charlie, he's my middle name, was also a very hardworking man with all that kind of stuff. My dad was as well, and I gravitated towards those kinds of men, the men who were awesome on the inside, and you could see it on the out. And that character became my word when I was a little boy, and I became obsessed with that. To the point that when hard things started to become, this is just very important because I think we all go through this. I've not met a human that hasn't struggled with this. Your true self becomes the false self because the false self is just a slightly distorted version of your true self. That moment in the mirror.
Say that again. So people taking notes. I feel like that was like a.
My Venmo is. I'm just kidding. No. Your true self comes to the false self because the false self is just a slightly distorted version of the true self. So it's just a slight distortion. It's just a slight infringement on your true self. My true self was that little boy dreaming about what kind of man I would be and the character that I wanted to have. Deciding what kind of man I wanted to be defined how I could have fun as a child and have fun as a man. Trauma comes in my life. It's not trauma's fault. It's my responsibility. But when trauma came in my life, as it does for all of us, that moment makes me feel like, well, so this should, I need to, I must, I have to. Those kinds of inner dialogue things take that pure truth and they slightly distort it. So then I started performing. And I don't mean like music and film and
right.
all that. I'm talking like I had something to prove, And so that true self became slightly false. And that false self, your false self, I mean, it'll kill itself. It'll kill you.
Wow.
If you live to please the false self.
Wow.
So that inner child, that's what we're talking about. So Kirsten, when you talk about like that dialogue with yourself, that's why I was so curious about it, because it really is going back to that state of purity and acknowledging that, and here's the last thing, is you are that person now, today. Like that pure, you're a grown woman. And you were pure then and you're pure now. And 40-year-old Kirsten is also the same in purity and brilliance and all those kinds of things. And we all need that dialogue. You know what I mean? There's an old man down inside of me that's depending on me to be smart. Because when my back is out and my knees are weak and my arms are heavy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so good. Wow. You said so many things right now that I want to touch on, but I think like
It's my fault. I'm going all into it. But
it's crazy though. I never really thought of it that way, how our inauthentic self is so close to our true self that it's so sneaky. Like you don't even recognize it sometimes. And I think you mentioned that like before when we were talking, if we believe a lie, then we put our worth into proving that lie wrong. So I think that's a quote that you said. I'm quoting it back to you. But I think that plays into that, and correct me if I'm wrong because it's your quote, but I feel like that plays into that true self versus false self. The false self is kind of getting into that I'm believing a lie, some lie about myself. So then I'm going to prove that wrong. So, like 10-year-old Kirsten was believing the lie that I'm not good enough. So then I worked so hard to prove that wrong. And that manifested for me in my schoolwork and in my relationships and people pleasing. Is that what you meant by that quote?
It is. Well, really, and I hope you've forgiven yourself too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was such a healing thing running into my teacher and also then journaling about it. And it also taught me something, that whole experience. I was sitting there and I had so many things that I had to get done. I don't even remember what they were at the time. Now, at the time, it seemed really important. And then I had this little nudge.
That part. You know what I mean? Like that
What was
part's.
that?
It's funny that you forgot the things that you were
Oh,
doing, but at the
yeah.
time you
Because
were
I
like,
think so many times we get ourselves like worked up into our own things that we put on ourselves that aren't really important. And I'm glad that I listened to that like inner voice that was like, go to the store with your mom, even though that seemed really insignificant at the time. I think being present to that and being present with yourself, that is
yeah,
another way that you can stay authentic and be present. Because I think when we allow our not true self to take over, then it takes us out of the present too, because we're always so caught up in proving something, proving our worth, proving our value.
well, you said it, and I remember that conversation we were having is belief systems.
Mm,
Whatever you believe, so what you value dictates what you believe. What I believe dictates how I think, which dictates how I act, which then turns into my results. So
mm,
that's values, beliefs, thoughts, actions, results. That's just a tool. That's
yeah.
just a fancy tool. Like, don't get distracted there. It's just that your belief systems, I think it all comes down to we create a life based upon what we believe. If you get broken up with, which I've been through that, I've been on the other
Mhm.
side of that as well, do you believe that you have value? And I don't mean like in a spiteful way where
Mhm.
she or he, no, 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 no. Do you, Kirsten Pfeiffer, do you, insert name here, do you believe that you have value with
Mhm.
no one watching? I mean, that's just a general question. But
Right.
as life comes upon us, do we believe what we value? Do we truly believe that about ourselves, about the world? Because if we don't, then it's full circle. That's when we look outside
Mhm.
of ourselves. We look to alcohol. I mean, the list goes on.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what you were talking about, the thing that you and I were talking about that you were referencing was belief systems. Your belief
Yeah.
systems are, I think it all comes down to that.
Right. So important. And I think you said it so well. Like you have to know that you're enough. No one else can give that value to you because again, referencing 2020, I think it showed us like these things that we put our value in, even in terms of keeping ourselves busy and
Hey.
and relationships. And I know sometimes I'm that way, like, oh, the busier my schedule, the more important I am, and I think um
Yeah.
being forced to sit at home for a year and look yourselves in the mirror and realize that no one can add value to myself if I don't believe it, because those things can all just be taken in an instant. Um,
Yeah.
and you also, this is a bit of a diversion, but have also said something really great about the difference between happiness and joy. In your
Oh yeah.
opinion, what is the difference between happiness and joy?
Um, happiness is result reliant. I think Matthew McConaughey, I just read his book. He says something very similar to
So
this.
good.
It's so good. But I've heard this said in a few different ways since I was little. It's actually, oddly enough, I didn't even think of this, Kirsten. This was something Roosevelt said. So,
Okay.
fun little moment. But basically, happiness is based on a result. Happiness is result reliant. Happiness is, Kirsten, I need you to like my shirt, and then I'll be good. I need you to value me. I need to get the six pack. I need to get the job. I need to get someone to affirm how well I cleaned the house. It may not even be a person, but it's based upon a result. It's fleeting. But joy is in the doing of the deed. Joy is in the making of the movie. Joy is in the writing of the song. Joy is in the mowing of the lawn. Joy is in the journey of being you. Joy is in the journey of a new relationship. Joy is in the journey of being with your wife or husband for 40 years. I mean, joy is in, I could go on and on, but joy is in the doing. Happiness is based on a result. And in the joy is where we find our true self. I'll give you one analogy that I thought of this morning. A little girl, let's say, well, actually, this is a real story. A little girl once was with a group of people, and they want to take a picture. The power goes out. The little girl rushes underneath one of the tables that has a flashlight, grabs a flashlight, and holds a flashlight and says, "Take the picture." And everyone says, "Well, hey, sweetie, don't you want to get in the picture?" And she said, No, I want to hold the light. That's a seed. There's something about her inner identity. There's something about her joy is in the doing of holding that light. Now, I'm not saying that means she'll hold lights forever.
Yeah.
But she's a problem solver.
Wow.
She's a leader.
Yeah.
Right? So these are things we should usually look for in our children.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the parents should see it. Sometimes they don't. Or we maybe discover them later in life. But there are seeds that just need a little fertilizer within you that for a 60-year-old man have been in there for his whole life. I mean, I just really think that that's so important, is our joy is also where our true self is.
Wow.
And happiness is fleeting. Seek joy. I have to work on that all the time. I'm not perfect in that regard.
Yeah.
I'm very much imperfect, which is why I'm here.
Yes. We're all imperfect. We're all in this together. But it reminds me of Brene Brown. I was listening to her podcast recently, and she was talking about mastery versus success. And it's really the same parallel between joy and happiness, except for she's talking about success. So success is in the validation, in the result, in other people are saying that I'm good enough. Other people are celebrating my work. Mastery is the pursuit of making yourself better and better, and being a craftsman, and doing what you've been called to do better and better every time. So we think that we celebrate success, but really when we're celebrating a movie that won an Oscar, an amazing book, all these things, we're actually celebrating mastery. Because I bet you, I don't have to bet you, I know that artist, that author, that filmmaker has been working on mastering their craft for years and years and years. And we didn't see the things that the world may have called a failure, which in her analogy, she talks about there really is no such thing as failure, because failure implies the end of something, at least how our society has defined it, because success basically is putting an emphasis on failure. But when you're looking at it in terms of mastery is like, I'm just going to keep getting better regardless. And that is where you find the joy. It's that process that you're talking about, the joy. And no one can take that away from you. No one can say, oh, you're not on this pursuit of mastery. They can say, oh, that's not a success, but what is success? So I think switching that up, it's something that no one can take away from you.
That's also where you start to drop the ways that you identify that it should be. I should have done this by this age. I should have, accomplished this by then. I should have. I mean, I have a client who's 20 years old and is beating himself up because he thinks he's too old. Oh, what?
I'm laughing because 20-year-old Kirsten was stressed about the same thing. Especially you're an actor, it's like, Oh, you haven't booked your first series regular. By the time you're 18, you're screwed.
But we can't do that because here's the answer, really, or just my opinion. We all didn't have the same starting place.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like I can only, you can only, we can only do something because we truly love it, because it speaks to our core, because it's for something bigger than ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about charity. I'm talking about purpose.
Yeah.
It's for something bigger. I love storytelling. So,
Yeah.
and why I do that is because there's a way to get to the heart that's deeper and stronger and more powerful, in a way that my heart resonates with, that falls in love with storytelling. So that's where some of that comes from. So start asking yourself those questions. If you're listening to this, start asking yourself the questions. We're kind of getting into identity and purpose for a second, but
Right.
purpose is not a paycheck. A paycheck won't make you happy.
Yeah.
Purpose will. A
Yeah.
purpose-driven life.
Yeah.
And begin asking yourself the questions of, what would I do if I gave myself permission? And from there, drop the things. I'm 26 years old as well. And there are so many things that I went through that I struggled with, that I did not start the journey fully committing to what I dreamed about as a 9-year-old until I was 24 years old.
Wow.
And I can tell myself, oh my gosh, if I could go back and talk to my 14-year-old self, or my this and this. No. All those things mattered. In fact, they made me who I am. And I would bet for all of us, if we really had a hard look at ourselves and dropped a victim's mindset, I may not like hearing that, but if you drop the victim's mindset, you may hate me after this if you're listening, but if you drop the thing that says, well, this happened to me, sweetheart, they moved on.
Yeah.
And they're a son and a daughter too.
Yeah.
So as soon as you give yourself the permission to forgive yourself, you can forgive other people, and you can drop the victim mindset. I didn't do that till I was 24.
Wow.
And then I started fully acting and singing and songwriting, doing the things I really wanted to do. And my timeline is my timeline. All of our timelines are our timelines.
Yeah.
And I had also a mentor who slapped me in the gear because I was trying to figure out, like, how do I make this go faster? How do I make up for lost time? And he said so sweetly to me, he was a director I had in New York, and he says, Luke, success is not a goal. And I realized, like, man, I'm pursuing this for the wrong reasons. I have to make up for lost time, so that way people who doubted me will love me now.
Anytime you're doing something like that, you're doing it from this place of, again, trying to prove something wrong, and from this like scarcity mindset of like, I don't have enough time, I don't have this, and I should, this happened. But when you can eliminate all of that and press reset, forgive yourself, forgive others, be like, you know what? I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Because actually, all those other experiences prior to where you are now, whether it was traumatic or not, those experiences are going to serve you on your path as you continue. Just from an actor's perspective, I mean, acting is creating life in front of the camera. So, how can you do that if you've never lived some life? That's why older actors are always better. So it's this like flip that we have to make, I think, whether you're an actor or not. Nothing, I don't think anything's a mistake. Yeah. I think that everything that happens to us can be used for good, and it is used for good if you allow it to be, and if you, again, drop the victim mentality, which we're all guilty of.
Now, that doesn't mean you can't feel.
Yeah.
Give yourself permission. Those feelings are real, and if you're going through a breakup, or I'm just using that example because I've been there, and if you're going through something like that, and it takes more than a couple of days or a couple of months, that's fine. Those are feelings. The feelings will move.
Yeah.
They will
And
move.
it's good to feel those feelings. I think like even anxiety and energy, like that's all energy and motion. So like if you don't have any energy, then you're a boring person, and if you don't have like, I think that what?
Well, Kirsten said, if you don't have any energy, you're boring.
I also, coming from the girl that's addicted to caffeine. But I think like learning how to channel those emotions into something productive, like you said, not beating yourself up for having them. It's actually makes you human. That's why the name of this podcast is Imperfect, because when you embrace your imperfections or you embrace those negative emotions that you're feeling, you embrace the struggles that you've walked through in the past, you can use that then to help people in such a powerful way. I mean, look at your bulimia experience that you walked through, Luke. That's something that I'm sure at the time you looked at as an imperfection, but it's now like your superpower, and it's your strength that you can empower and encourage and inspire so many people with. And that's just what I'm really passionate about, is like the more we embrace our vulnerabilities, the more we allow people to show up as they are exactly today, not who they want to be in 5 years, but who they are now. And I think that from that place is where we find our true strength.
Yeah, 100%. That's that true self and false self thing. Your true
Yeah.
self is going to be, or your false self, excuse me, is going to be just a slightly distorted version of who you truly are.
Yeah.
So trauma
And
doesn't define who you are. What's been done to you doesn't define who you are. The mistakes
Yeah.
that I've made, that I make regularly, don't define who I am.
yeah. And how do you, like, once you have that clear definition of who you are, sometimes I think you can say in your head, okay, I know I'm significant. I know that I'm of value. I know, but it takes a while for that to actually take root in your life. How do you actually live that out?
Um, you've got to be willing to take it one day at a time, first of all. I mean, that's why we get our daily bread. That's why we've got to be willing to, that's why we sleep. There's a reason that human beings are designed to rest. And I'm not talking like, because people hear the word rest and like, okay, we get it. No. You can be going 100 miles an hour and resting. You can be sleeping and resting. You can, it's, my rest, my physical sleep even, I get to break up each day. So each day is a new daily bread. Each day is a new opportunity. That completely breaks it up so that way I can actually do that. And then the second thing is that dialogue is a choice. It's a choice each and every day. Some days are obviously harder than others. Some days are not. And that's why we have community. That's why we have a pen and a journal. That's why we have what I call the circles of covenant. All right. And so basically this means I've got 4 circles. This is not a hierarchy or a competition. All this is I know the 4 circles of the folks in my life. And this isn't saying that someone in circle 4 is lesser than 1 or 2 or 3. It's just being aware of where my life is right now and who I run with, who I allow to influence me, and not in defiance but in joy. And so, you know, you're saying like you are who you surround yourself with.
Right.
I went through some recent trauma in my life. Came back this past year, and so a big part of that was going to the people, the mentors in my life. And see, here's one more thing. So how do you find those people? How do you know they're real? If you bear the fruit that you want to attract, you will attract those people. And the other thing too is you can tell the character of a person by their fruit. My mentor, he's like a second dad to me, right? It's the fruit of his life, not his accolades or success, the fruit of his character, the fruit of how he's built relationship, leads me to know I can trust him. So he has a great influence on me. Summarize all that up. What am I trying to say? Your rest, but not the rest that you think, the rest of actual inside rest. And the people you surround yourself with, one day at a time. Being able to, and this is the real thing I'm trying to say, is to be naked. I go to those people, not for the sake of doing it so I feel better about myself, because I've done that too, where I've told people what's going on just so I can check it off my... No.
Yeah.
The real people, the ones who help sharpen me and call out the inner king, the inner son, the inner queen, the inner daughter, like, they pull that out. So I drop the victim's mindset, but I also understand that pain is honest and real. And so I become and I step into a greater version of myself that's not trying to prove anything. And it's because I've surrounded myself with those people. They remind me who I am.
Right.
And then all that is, but at the end of the day, I can hear all that and still not make the choice. And I've done that too. And the only one that I'm hurting at that point is myself. So I choose to be naked. I choose to be vulnerable and come fully forward, not with if something's dark going on inside of my head, I'll go to these people and I'll mention it. I'll be naked about it. I'll be vulnerable about it.
Yeah.
Is it, as parents, don't we, or as children even, don't we want our parents to model vulnerability and want us to be able to? That's why a kid wants to put their picture on the refrigerator. They want their parents to be proud. They want to feel safe. No matter how old you get, no matter how good you look or bad you look, we all want to feel safe.
Yeah, so true. But I think so many of us, and I've done it before, if you don't have those relationships set up where you can feel safe, then you kind of like internalize all those things and you shove those things down and it festers. And so those little lies that we continue to believe or the things that we're struggling with, it festers deep down. And then that's why sometimes 15 years later, you have to have this like healing experience with your 10-year-old self because those things just take such a strong hold on us and continue to like impact us and control us in ways that we don't even realize sometimes. So having that community, not only to like come to, but also to hold you accountable and to call you out if you're not making that decision, to bring it to the light and not acting in integrity with that.
And I think too, something I'm super curious if you've experienced this, Kirsten, but the things that they may call out, because that maybe can feel like something you don't want to get into if you're listening to this. It may not feel happy, but man, it feels joyful. I feel closer to that person.
Yeah.
Joy is so much stronger a feeling than happy.
Yeah.
It may not feel great to hear him say, hey, come on, you're better than this. This is why, drop the whatever. That's cool. But when it's rooted in love, finding those people, it's joyful. It actually I can feel a deeper level of intimacy with myself and then therefore with that relationship.
Yeah. So important. And I think we've gotten so used to being comfortable and feeling entitled to being comfortable that sometimes we'll resent when people challenge us because it makes us feel uncomfortable. But when I look at my closest and deepest relationships, there has been uncomfortable times, there has been friction, but that's kind of the growing pains, and you can't grow without having pain. So that's why it's called growing pains. And I think having that community that challenges you and like loves you through all of that is really, really important. And I know it's helped me. Like I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have community. So I love that. So community and making a choice and resting. That's how.
Home and community are different things.
Yeah.
Okay. I can find home where I hang my hat. Emotionally too. And but community, I build that where I go home. So that's why you can have friends in different places and spaces. That we live in an era where you can connect with people who are just a phone call away. It takes a little more intention, but man, exercising that intention. I'll put it this way. If someone really makes it a point that you care about and love to call you once a week, that feels awesome because it says something. You intentionally pursue a relationship with me because you must like something, right? So home and community are different things.
Yeah. So
I hope that
so
makes
good.
sense.
No, it totally does. I'm just like, I want to keep going with all this, but I feel like we need to have a podcast part 2. So you are officially invited to, I know like also anyone that's listening, Luke has such kind of like authority and influence in the area of talking about women's empowerment as a man. Like it's really rare to find someone that talks about that authentically and just empowers the women in his life, as well as empowering men. And so I think and I know I want to have a conversation with you about all of that. But for today, if you could leave listeners with one thing, what would it be?
Start dreaming again. And we can misuse that word too. So when I say dream, what I mean is get back to claiming authority. You said that word, I loved it. Claiming authority over who you truly are at the center of your core, and dream about what that person is, what that person looks like. Drop the need to prove anything. Drop the need to, if you feel like you need to, if the word need pops up anywhere in that dialogue, that's not authentic. That's not you.
Yeah.
Get back to
So
dreaming again. Give yourself permission to dream again. And I think there's also some folks who might listen to this and get upset at me saying that because you've dreamed before and gotten let down. Joy and happiness are two very different things. You don't need worldly success when you have joy. So start dreaming again, because you will have joy in the doing of those things.
I love that.
I can feel that there's going to be folks who are going to feel what I'm saying and probably get a little upset. Dream again. Seek joy. And maybe before you've sought happiness, and when you've sought happiness, it let you down because it was based on a result.
Yeah.
Your true self is there. And guess what? The actions may look the same. And maybe pursuing that career that you let go of. And maybe doing a whole new different one, because that other one was just a whole bunch of BS distracting you from something else. But if it's not the thing, it'll be the thing that leads to the thing. So dream again and seek joy.
That's it.
I'm still learning this, okay?
Yeah.
I'm still figuring it out. But this is just where I'm currently at. And I think when we dream together, we can change together, we can grow together. There's something about dreaming that goes beyond ourselves, goes beyond our generation and our time. Dreaming is supposed to be emphatic because it is.
Yeah.
And you become something bigger than yourself. Kirsten and Kirsten, I know you're not just doing this so folks will like you. It's really, really something cool that you're doing, because you're doing it for a reason bigger than yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean you need a podcast. It can be being a janitor at a high school. The vocation is non-void. It's being authentic. So go dream again.
I love that. And last question is, what is your imperfection that you're most proud of?
That I'm most proud of?
Yeah.
Oh man, this is great. Yeah. What are the imperfections that I'm most proud of? Oh my gosh. Well,
it's a trick question.
It is a trick question. My mind just went 80,000 different ways. There are two that are tied in my mind that come to perfection. One's physical, one's emotional. Real brief. When I was born a still baby, and I had a hole in my lung. It was a whole story. I had a hole in my lung. I was, my heart stopped beating. It was a crazy moment. My parents were freaking out. That moment was super imperfect for me, because I passed. I was born still, and they were getting ready to write my death time, and I just started crying. And then they found that hole in my lung. They rushed me to the ICU. That first moment was traumatic and a miracle in and of itself. And then they found that hole in my lung, and they told my parents, "Hey, we're going to operate in 3 days if this doesn't clear up," because I couldn't breathe. The umbilical cord had wrapped around my neck. That was pretty much what happened. And so, and somewhere along the lines, my lung was stifled in its growth. So they said, if we don't see healing, then we're going to have to do it ourselves, and it'll permanently inhibit his ability to do sports or music, anything on a stage, any type of performance. He won't be able to do that. And then 2 days pass, nothing happens. The third day, they get ready to operate, and they pull me out, and it's perfectly healed.
Wow.
And I'm sharing this with you because I don't think I've ever shared that story before.
Wow.
But it's perfect for this moment, because every time I act or sing or just share and have a conversation, or just get up in the morning and have my coffee, dude, that was once going to be impossible before I even was. I don't remember,
Yeah.
So it was an imperfection that there was healing, but it gave me such a deep sense of purpose, the joy of being alive, and
using your voice.
using my voice, acting, singing, songwriting, like all those things are important to me for a deeper reason. So
I love that.
I'll just leave you with that one. That's the one.
Yeah, that's like mic drop. Let's just end it there. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've told me that story before, and I'm so encouraged by that. And I think it's appropriate for what I feel like has been on my heart of our imperfections usually are so closely linked to our purpose, because there's so much power in that.
Hey,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
here we are.
right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Luke, for joining us. For anyone listening, where can they find you and connect with you on social media, etc.?
Yeah, you can find me, my full name, Lucas Charles Stafford, or you can just search Luke Charles and you'll find me. That's anywhere and everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, smoke signals. I'm available. I also have a life coaching business called Find My Purpose Life Coaching. You can find that the same name on any of those platforms as well. We have some great coaches too, and we'd love to connect with you too. So it's more than just me out here. We want to make folks find some purpose. So
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Luke. You're amazing. And I know I've been blessed with this conversation, and I know that so many people listening will be too. So thank you again.
yeah, thanks so much for having me. Seriously.
Of course. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next week.